Welcome to the Refine and Shine, the podcast dedicated to mastering the art of continuous improvement and optimizing every aspect of your life. I'm Angelina Rivera, your host, and together we'll uncover the secrets to refining our lives, our habits, and our processes to unlock our inner brilliance. Join us on Refine and Shine, where we'll delve deep into achieving more in life without the burnout and without all the stress. This podcast is your platform for a more fulfilling life through continuous improvement and personal growth. In each episode, I and a diverse array of guests discuss practical strategies for up-leveling every aspect of your life. From developing good habits and organizing your space to refining your mindset and personal goals, we're going to explore it all. Our guests share personal stories about the systems they've developed or systems they've used and the tweaks they've made in their lives when refinement was needed, allowing them to truly shine. Listen to Refine and Shine to learn how you can implement continuous improvement techniques in your daily routine, develop and maintain healthy habits that lead to success and satisfaction, organize your life to reduce the stress and increase your productivity, foster a growth mindset that propels you to new heights. My mission is to inspire you to take bold action, make positive changes, and become the best version of yourself. Whether you're aiming to elevate your career, nurture meaningful relationships, or enhance your overall well-being, Refine and Shine is your guiding light. With over 25 years of experience in continuous improvement, I help businesses streamline their processes, establish efficient work areas, and implement standard work protocols. I have trained over 600 individuals and teams in process improvement, optimizing workflows, and enhancing overall operational efficiency. Tune in every week as we embark on an enlightening journey, exploring paths to refinement and illuminating the way to shine in every area of our lives. Subscribe now and join us on this journey to polish your life and let your best self shine through. Thank you for joining us on Refine and Shine. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Refine and Shine podcast. I'm super excited to have one of my dear friends, and I say that she's a dear friend because I have so many amazing people that I've met by putting myself into situations or places where I've got to interact with people, putting myself into coachings, masterminds, and things like that. And when I first met Deborah, it was such a connection. She is such a true, beautiful person with a heart of gold. She's known to many as the Queen of Hope. She is on a mission to connect you to a life full of purpose, passion, and joy. As a life and wellness coach, she shortens the path from where you are to where you want to be. She's created a simple 5-pillar coaching system allowing you to thrive in all aspects of your life, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically, and financially. She knows all too well what it's like to be thrown in the trenches through no fault of her own. In a 3-month period, her husband lost his job, their property was hit by a tornado, and they faced a health diagnosis at a time with no insurance coverage. Enduring these trials for 2 years strained her hope and faith, leaving her feeling as though God had abandoned her. While it wasn't easy, she found ways to strengthen her marriage, cling on to hope, and discover the hidden treasure in the trench. Today, she's a motivational speaker, she's a podcast host, and a life and wellness coach. Her mission is to share with you the tools she created so you'll always be filled with hope and start living a life of intention, purpose, and fulfillment. I love that so much, and that is just you to the T. And I just want to say thank you, Deborah, for being on here today.
Thank you, Angelina. I'm so excited to be here with you. And it truly has been the journey of meeting all the people because we put ourselves in the room. Like, I love one, you inspire me. Like, I am so grateful that I get to call you my friend. And truly, if ever I need to feel inspired, I just think of you and inspiration instantly comes into my mind and spirit. So thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. And you're welcome. And I want to say that what comes to mind when I think of you is not only hope, but you're just a spiritual person as well. Like you find just you're like my walking Bible, so to speak. Like you show me what there is about. I mean, you're such a devoted to your faith. And I will tell you one time she was so devoted we were at a retreat. If you don't mind, I share this.
uh,
No, go ahead.
we were at a retreat and she really wanted to go to church and, mass. It was a holy day of obligation, I believe, or I'm not sure what it was, but she needed to go. She wanted to go. And that's just the thing about Deborah. She will find a way to make sure that she is there at church. And she rolled underneath the gate because she couldn't figure out a way how to open it. So she rolled her body in her white pants, but she got to church. And that's the thing
I
I love
did.
about you is that you will find a way and you don't think of it, oh, this is not meant for me. You find a way. You find a way and you take the lessons that you've learned to make sure that you can share that with others. And so I just thank you for that. And tell me how you became the Queen of Hope. Like who first told you that, or how did you get called that name?
I don't actually really remember like who first labeled it or how it came about, but I think it's because almost in every situation, Angelina, I'm kind of like I tell people I'm that bruiser. I mean, I know we all have heard oh gosh, his name escapes me now, who talks about the five people
Justin
that you need.
Justin
Justin
Shinick, yeah, Shank, yeah,
Shank or
Shank
Shinik.
or Shinik, I
Thank
think.
yeah. So the 5 people you need in life, and when he was talking that day, I was like, I'm kind of the bruiser. Like, I will listen to somebody's story and I will have so much empathy, and my heart will literally ache and bleed with them, and I will cry with them. But then I will look at them and I will either ask them, like, like, so where's the good? Like, where's the silver lining? Or if something terrible has happened to somebody because somebody has done something to them, I might just ask them, like, gosh, I wonder what happened to that other person that caused them to be that way towards you. You know, and it's not always welcomed, like with, people don't always welcome that kind of feedback because some people just want, you know, the person that's gonna let them just cry in their shoulder forever, the softie, and just
Mhm.
let you tell your sob story and just be like, "Oh my gosh, you're right. The world just is so terrible. Like everybody's wronged you." But I just always feel like no matter what is going on in our life, there's always a glimmer of hope.
I love that. I love that. There's always a glimmer of hope. And that's so
Mm.
true. And like we read in your bio, I mean, you guys went through a lot with your husband losing his job, being struck by a tornado, and then, illnesses. But I love what you share about through all of those things. And it was some tough times. And I love when you talk about it. And there were some really tough times. But what was your glimmer of hope out of all of that?
Oh my goodness. So yeah, that was a really challenging time. And I tell people, I distinctly remember. So it was like bam, 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 3 months in a row. The first month, my husband lost his job. The second month, it was like 6:30 in the morning. We're sleeping in bed. The house starts to shake. The whole house is shaking. And it's like literally the thing you hear out of movies, how they're like, oh, there's this train sound. And there was this really loud sound. And I don't really know. I've never been in a tornado before. I don't know, but we jolted out of bed and we both screamed tornado at the same time. How we knew it was a tornado, I really don't know. And everything around our house was destroyed. Our house, thankfully, was intact. But it's when you find out then suddenly, like, homeowners insurance doesn't actually cover any of the damage in your property. And you have tens of thousands of dollars worth of like trees that are like laying all over the place with just gigantic craters in the earth from where the root balls were. And how are you going to pay for all this? And by the way, you just lost your job last month. And then the following month, like the health diagnosis with surgery that was required with no health insurance. And we started like kind of going more to church. We always went to church, but we started doing retreats that we had always wanted to do, but we're too busy. And I remember about 9 months into the journey, my husband looked at me one day and he was like, what is wrong with me? Like something must be wrong with me. He was interviewing for jobs. Everybody kept turning him down. They'd be like, oh, we're going to call you tomorrow for an offer. And then tomorrow would come and it would be like, oh, I'm sorry, it's frozen. And this went on for 9 months. And he's like, what's wrong with me? Like, we're going to church all the time. We're going to adoration. We're, Bible study. Something must be physically wrong. I've turned everything over to God. And I was like, well, we've turned everything over but one thing, you know? And he looked at me and I was like, we haven't turned over our fertility because we practice natural family planning. And so we always made sure it was safe, a
Mhm.
safe time. And he kind of stopped asking if it was a safe time. And
Mm-hmm.
sure enough, lo and behold, like 2 months later, I got pregnant. And I'm telling you all of this because the thing is I was blessed at the end to see the pieces of the story that happened that seemed terrible. Like some people
Mm-hmm.
might right now might be like, oh my gosh, all that happened. Like that's so terrible. Well, it actually turned out to be one of the biggest blessings from God,
Mm-hmm.
but we couldn't see it in the muck of it. Now,
Mm-hmm.
every day I would tell my husband, like if he was having a really bad day, in general, he tends to be the worry wart. I always say, I don't need to worry about a thing. He'll worry about it for me. Right. And I'm always the one that's like, oh my gosh, it'll be all okay. But I would always tell him, like, even on the darkest of days, I would just be like, but we woke up today.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if that is all we can say, we woke up today. Somebody else didn't get to wake up today. And so we announced that we were having this baby at our 13th wedding anniversary, which was in November. And it was met with a lot of not the joy that I was expecting. People made the comment of, oh, wow, that was a mistake. Oh, you do know how you could have avoided that, right? And those comments were so hurtful to me. But looking back, I realized that people said that because they were really scared for us.
Mm-hmm.
Because there we were 11 months in, no insurance. Now we were pregnant. We had 3 other children. On paper, it didn't seem like the right time to have a baby, right? And so they were just really worried. And this job search continued for another, well, gosh, almost another 10 months or so. It was the following September. And well, my daughter was born in July. My husband thought for sure he would have a job by then. July came and went, and he had no job. On the day she was born, he went into the deepest, darkest depression you could ever possibly imagine, because at that point he felt like a failure as a father, as a provider, and as a husband. And I never told him that. I absolutely did not feel that way at all. I had no idea why he was not getting any job. I could
Mm-hmm.
not explain it, but I just kept telling him, like, it's going to be okay, hon. Like, I don't know why, but like, I just know in my gut, like, things are going to be okay. And, um, 6 weeks passed, and he literally pretty much laid in bed almost for 6 weeks. I mean, he would get up, but he'd kind of checked out, which is so understandable. There's no judgment there at all. But in September, he had a job offer. Well, he had a job he was interviewing for up in New Jersey. And so we flew to Jersey to go on this interview because it seemed like it was progressing. And on our way home, I called his parents. They weren't watching our kids, but I was just calling his parents just to tell them how it was. And his mom was so strange acting. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how people act normally. And so she was very evasive, very vague. And I hung up the phone and I told him, like, "Hon, I don't know what's wrong with your mom, but something is really strange about her right now." And the next morning we got a phone call from his parents, and they were at the hospital. And the day before, when I had called them, they had just gotten word from the doctor. They'd gone in with my father-in-law thinking he was having a heart attack, and the doctor had just come in and said, "Good news, bad news. Good news is your heart is fine. Bad news is you have lung cancer. An oncologist will be in tomorrow to talk to you." And that was the news that they had heard moments before I called them. And
Mm-hmm.
so it totally explains why she was so vague. Um, and at that time, we really did not know what to do because my husband had this potential job offer in Jersey. He just found out that his father was diagnosed with what ended up being stage 4 lung cancer. And we were torn as to, do we take this job or not? And as God would have it, some would say luck. I will definitely say God would have it. Out of the clear blue, a phone call came from another company, and he'd interviewed with this company in the summer, had been told no, but they're like, "Hey, we have another position we think you might be interested in. Do you want to come in?" And so he went in, he interviewed, and we were literally like sitting on pins and needles, like, how fast can this company move? Like, will they make you an offer? Do we need to take this offer in Jersey? Because we literally had spent our life savings, was depleted. Um, and the day before he was supposed to actually move to Jersey, because the decision had been made, he would move to Jersey, we would stay in Georgia. the company in Georgia called him with an offer. And it was such a low offer in comparison. Like everything on paper said, go to Jersey. And his parents were like, go to Jersey. You need to go to Jersey. And I just looked at him. We were at a baseball game with my kids. And I told him, I said, let's just go to church and pray over this,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And so he's like, okay, I'm the numbers girl. And so he's like, bring all the budgets, like bring all the spreadsheets. And as we're driving to church, I told him, I said, tell me about the jobs, Chris. Just tell me what you're excited about each job. And he was talking. And Angelina, I mean to tell you, I cannot even describe the sensation that came through my body, but it started at my toes. And every time I remember it, I'm like, oh my gosh, it was such an incredible feeling. Like you want that like all over again, like all the time. But it was like this warm breeze that went through my toes, through my whole body with chills. And I heard God say, I have taken care of you for 2 years. How dare you think I won't take care of you now? You have to stay in Georgia. And meanwhile, my husband's going on and on about these jobs. And I am just sitting there now, like in this complete chilled, very weird state. And we get to church, we go into the adoration chapel, and he's like, okay, pull out the spreadsheets. And I just looked at him and I'm like, God just told me we have to stay in Georgia. It did not make sense financially to stay in Georgia,
Mm-hmm.
but we stayed in Georgia. And my father-in-law passed away within 4 months. It was so fast. And I realized looking back, like all the blessings that happened, all the jobs that my husband interviewed for, and he interviewed for a lot, and a lot promised an offer the next day. Every single job my husband had interviewed for almost 2 years was out of state. And had any of those job offers come through like they promised they were going to come through, we would have moved out of state instantly because it would have just made sense. And in that 2 year time period, my husband was fishing with his father, was coaching baseball with his father, was having lunch with his father, just talking about like job search, spending all this time with his father. And what I realized is it was such a gift. Like
Mm-hmm.
we were given the gift of time with his father, which is so much more valuable than anything that money could ever buy. And that sweet little baby that people are like, oh, that must have been a mistake. Well, that was the one grandchild that did not look at grandpa funny because he was graying and thin and sickly looking and lost all his hair. And all the other grandchildren loved him and would play around him. But she was the one that would just sit in his lap and Google. And I remember the day before he passed away. Oh my gosh. I was at his house. We were at his house almost every single day those last 4 months. And I had Honor with me. And at this point, he was pretty much comatose. He would kind of open his mouth for little ice chips. And Honor was with me, and she made like this googly sound. And he just kind of startled, and his eyes got really wide. And I was like, Grandpa, look who came to visit you. It's Honor. And he got this huge, big smile on his face. And then he like just drifted away. And it was that night I called my husband. My husband was the only person that could not say goodbye. Everybody else had told him it was okay to go, but my husband just couldn't bring himself to say that. And I called my husband and I was like, you have to tell your dad it's okay. You have to tell him that you'll be okay. He has to hear it from you. And he went and he talked to him and he for like 2+ hours and he came home and he sobbed like a baby. And the next morning, my father-in-law passed away. But I know in my heart after watching my husband for those 4 months, had we moved away, I don't know how my husband would have survived
Oh
because he
yeah.
needed that 2 years and then those 4 months, he needed that time emotionally. He's such a person that really has such deep feelings. You know, like some people maybe, I don't know, they don't have that bond with people, but
Mhm.
he probably would have been crushed. I honestly don't know how emotionally he would have handled it had we moved away, and his father ultimately would have one day been diagnosed with cancer and died. And so I just look back on that time as a gift. And ever since then, I'm always telling people, like, I don't know what your journey is. I don't know how terrible it seems. I know, how dark it might be, and you are just feeling like everything around you is crumbling down and nothing is going right. But I am telling you, there is a purpose for the journey,
Mhm. I
and you may be
agree.
blessed to know it, and you might not.
No, I think that's so important. It's one of the great lessons to learn is, like sometimes we're in the rut and things are hard and they're really, really hard. But if we hold on to faith, everything happens for a reason. And it's just maybe we don't see it right away, but there is something, and it's all about God's timing, right?
Yes.
Jeremiah 29:11, right? He knows the plans he has for us. And
Mhm.
I don't remember the whole part, but not to harm us or hurt us. But that's so important. And when you were talking, the whole time you were talking, there were memories that came up in my head, my mind about things that have happened to me. And that I was like, I need to talk about this more. When I got my job with the federal government, I took a $7 an hour pay cut. I had two
Mhm.
children, and
Right.
I was a carrier of health insurance, all these things. And well, it was a big pay cut. One of the things that we always thought about, and when we, put it all on paper, I had another job offer. I had another job offer that I wouldn't have to commute. But in the long term, the job was, my kids and I and my husband, we would commute together to the work when I worked at the base, for a little bit of time. We would commute together. The kids would go to the base daycare. There was all these little things that made it sense, even though financially on paper it didn't make sense. It was the time
Mhm.
together, the bonds that we made, and then look, the federal government taking that pay cut. There was no job that the job that I have now, I wouldn't have been able to financially have this job, like, with the finances had I stayed at the other company or taken the other job offer that I had that I didn't have to commute. In fact, you max out after a certain amount, and I've surpassed all that, but it wasn't something that I wouldn't have known. It was like what you said, you just have to pray about it, and it was just something that God told me, "Take this job. It's gonna be a pay cut. It's gonna be hard, but there are gonna be reasons why this is so important for you." And it's not always to see when you're trying to figure out, "Okay, I got this amount of bills and I got this amount of
Right.
income. How is it gonna work?" But you figure out a way to make it work. There are things that you can cut out in life with your finances. You don't have to have we didn't have cable TV. We didn't have a lot of those things. In fact, we still don't have cable TV. There's things that you can do. And, we had to do macaroni and cheese a lot for dinner, but it was
Yeah.
fun. Our kids got to, learn how to make it and do all these things. And that's the thing. And then years later, because we were really good at making sure we knew how to budget, when my husband had to become medically retired was something that we did not plan for. We were
Right.
okay. And I think it's so important is your family was united. There's the things that are materialistic, and then there's the things that are family. And the family and those dynamics are something that nobody can put a price on. And I think that that's so
Yeah.
important. And that's why I love when you share this story, because it's look at the things, the family time, the connections, and that's so, so important versus something that, a new phone that can break or a new, like, those memories. I'm not going to remember how it felt to get my new phone more than I'm going to remember how precious it was to spend time with my family and my loved ones who have departed. Do you know what I'm saying? I think that's so
Yeah, no,
important.
I totally agree with you. And I will definitely say, um, money is not everything. And
Mhm.
I tell people, I'm like, sometimes you have to really get in a quiet spot where you can just, even if you don't feel like you hear God speaking, sometimes it's just like this feeling that you have in this gut that's just telling you, do this thing, whatever it is. And I encourage people to follow that and to listen to that. And the other thing that was really important to us, is a life lesson from this. And so I tell people, like, I ask people, like, what is it in your life that you're holding on to because you feel that you know best? Because a lot of times we feel we know best, right? So, like, for us, initially it was we felt we knew best to not have a baby. It seemed like on And nobody would question us for why we would not try to get pregnant. And we weren't trying to get pregnant, but we just stopped not trying, you know? And that was something that we were like, when my husband's like, I've turned everything over to God. Well, we really had not. We had
Mhm.
not turned everything over. So, in your life, is there something in your life right now that you're holding on to, whether it's staying at a particular job, something within your business, something that you're unwilling to let go of because you're afraid of what might happen? And I just encourage you to pray over that and decide, is that something that you just need to lay at the feet of God and just see what happens? Let Him take the steering wheel.
Mhm. I think that's so important. And when you're so right. Like when you have to just give it all to God, and He will let you know. So like when you were part of the process of when I, decided to look for other jobs, and then when I found this job that I currently have, and the do I move, do I do all these things, and what about all these things, and all the doubts and all the fear that came. And when I decided to take the job and I said yes to the offer, the way that the sunrise looked, when I looked up opened my eye, like, went prayed, and I could feel it in my body, take the job.
Yes.
And when like, looking, I'm driving, and I just see this beautiful sunrise, and then the song that came on, I think it was called Promises or something, like, "You're gonna be okay." And I'm like,
Mm.
"Oh my gosh, I'm gonna take it." And when I told my husband, he's like, "Well," I'm like, "God said I'm gonna be okay." And there are times when I'm like, "Why did I do this?" Because it's hard sometimes. It's hard to, travel back and forth, but I'm home. I'm home on the weekends. I'm home, and there's so many other things, and I know that, there's a reason for it all. Like, I get, and that's the thing, is like, God will tell you He's gonna take care of you, and maybe the finances don't always align, but that's okay, because God's gonna take care of you. And I think that's so important. But I also wanted you to share with us your 5 pillars. What are your 5 pillars? I mean, we kind of briefly talked about them, but can you share a little bit more about them and how you came about with them?
Certainly. So I like to talk to everybody about your 5 pillars: your spiritual, mental, emotional, physical, and financial health. Because really, I realize that when we have one of those pillars off, like, if you can almost picture like Greek columns holding up a building, if the
Mhm.
pillars start to crumble, sooner or later, that building is going to come down. It doesn't matter how strong 2 of the remaining pillars are. If 3 of them are gone or getting cracks, the pressure of that building is coming down. And I refer to those pillars in your life as holding up these big balls, balls of joy and happiness and success and abundance and faith and hope and vibrancy. And as your pillars start to crumble, your balls start to come down. And so I
Mhm.
tell people, you need to look at each one of these pillars because it will also have an impact on you. So, for like finances, when your finances are in the toilet, most of the times it ends up making you feel stressed out, which impacts your physical health, right? And then because you're getting all stressed out, like now you're probably anxious or depressed. And guess what? That's starting to impact your mental health. And so it doesn't matter which pillar you take, all 5 are intertwined. None of them are always going to be 100% at the same time. But
Mhm.
if you can be looking at all 5 of your pillars and say, which one needs a little help? Who needs a little patchwork here? And I have found, mainly just through my own life, that when I pay attention to all of those 5 pillars, that's when I feel the best and I'm able to be the best mom and the best wife and show up to help others be their best.
I love that. It's like you gotta have your firm foundation, and your firm foundation is, I like when the way you described it, I could see the columns, and I could see the buildings, and all of that. And I think that's so important. And you're right. Like, if one's off, you're not in alignment, and you're gonna be offset, and it's not gonna be working well. And I think that, figuring out where you're at with your pillars, with each pillar, is so important. And so I thank you for that as well. And so, as we wrap up, how can I'm going to ask you what is one thing that my listeners, one thing that they can leave with, to help them, maybe a word or a phrase to help them refine and shine today?
Okay, a word or a phrase. Cutting it down to a word or phrase. I probably would just say hope. I mean, I really do always pull it back to hope. I would just say, no matter what, always try and figure out where is that silver lining.
Mhm.
I mean, and if it's the sort of thing like try and remember how is this happening for me and not to me. When you literally make that one shift of the word, this is happening for me and not to me, there's a reason for it. And so I'd say probably try to remember that phrase. How is this happening for me?
I think that's so important. And those are things that like that could be your phrase that you can put in your journal, and you think about your day every single day. All the negatives, okay, what did I learn from this? Like, is it okay? Is so important because we sometimes lose hope, right? And if
Mm.
you're looking at it, turning our perspective around and celebrating, like I talk about my shine principles, like every day celebrating the wins or, the things, I think it's so important. And so I thank you for that as well. And how can my listeners follow you? What's the best way?
Oh, so I'm on Facebook and Instagram. And so they can find me, and I'm sure you can stick it in the show notes, but it's just Deborah Bigda. I'm pretty easy to find. And I have the podcast as well, Restoring Hope. And so they can find me there. But yeah, I'd love to, just help bring them a little bit of hope and smiles in their day.
I love that. I love that. And yes, definitely follow her. She is amazing and she is fun, amazing, and just a beautiful person. She has the most amazing smile and she gives the best hugs. So she will let you know, like she in the conversations, like I am just truly blessed. I'll tell you again, I'm truly blessed to have you as a friend. And you and I can talk and catch up. We don't maybe talk every day, but then when we talk for hours and we're like, oh, wait, we're at a party
Mhm.
here and we're sitting here at the table talking. So thank you, Deborah, so much for being on. It's just truly been an honor to have you as my guest. And just thank you for being a friend. I appreciate it. So
Thank
thank you so
you. Thank
much.
you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Refine and Shine. We hope you find valuable insights and inspiration to fill your journey of continuous improvement. Remember, the key to success lies in refining your processes and letting your inner brilliance shine. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. Your feedback is greatly appreciated and helps us reach more listeners like you who are eager to refine and shine in all areas of life. Stay connected with us on social media for updates and additional resources and behind-the-scenes content. We love hearing from our listeners, so feel free to reach out with any suggestions, questions, or success stories you'd like to share. As we wrap up, remember that the power to transform your life lies within you. Keep striving for growth, embracing change, and seeking opportunities to refine your skills. Together, let's continue to shine bright and make a positive impact in the world. Until next time, keep refining and keep shining.